Welcome back to Northwest Digital News. I'm Kevin Hunter with Chris Bornstead and Kyle Torgerson in studio. It is a beautiful Friday on February 23rd. And it's actually been a little bit on the chilly side here in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. And Kyle, you have a weather forecast to share with everybody.
The rest of the week is going to be in the low 40s. Today is going to be the high 36 and low 34. And it looks like it's going to be raining all week with some slight snow mixed in.
We've had a little bit of snow mixed in around the hillsides around this country. In fact, in the Longview City Center, if you can pop that picture up, where this is actually a rare opportunity around here in this community.
I like the snow. I really enjoyed my snow days.
I like the snow, he says.
I like the snow.
Love it.
It's what's funny, and this would be comical to people who live in snow areas from around the country. It's really comical to other people who live in heavy snow areas that, you know, many functions, including government functions, you know, the schools, etc., shut down with the amount of snow that we see right here in this picture. We do shut down around here. But, you know, here's an interesting observation I was sharing with somebody here locally is that no amount of driving, I've driven on hundreds of thousands of miles of road that are ice and snow covered in my lifetime, but does not prepare you for driving on a 6-degree slope with wet, sloppy snow on it. It is slicker than snow.
Our area is a little bit unique. We have a lot of hills, and so, you know, it is funny because, you know, you watch the online posts and people are like, there's no snow on the ground. Why did you cancel school? Well, you see that hill right there?
Yeah.
There's about 40 kids that live up there, and there's a bus that has to drive up that hill, and it can't do it safely. So guess what? We're closed.
Yep.
Some of those buses go 30 minutes just through Rose Valley. And Rose Valley's pretty dangerous when it snows.
Yeah, my kid lives all the way out the end of Rose Valley with his mom, and he has to ride that bus. It's like an hour bus ride home every day into school, and he's getting ready to drive himself, though. But, I mean, that'll be fun to be done with because that's a long bus ride.
That it is. You know, it's interesting as last year, Longview had just had a dusting of snow, and on that same day, one of my friends back in Minnesota, Rebecca Tormanen, she had posted on her Facebook that morning that the bus driver had called her house and asked her if she would mind, or if one of the older girls could drive, you know, the kids down to the end of the driveway who were on the who were planning on riding the bus. But she asked if they could bring the girls down to the end of the driveway because the bus driver was having a problem with his brakes freezing up on the busing the kids around, and it was 20 below zero outside. So, but it had not occurred to them to cancel school despite snow and ice and 20 below temperatures.
This just in, the snow just hit Blaine, Washington. It's on its way down there. So it just actually popped up right now. It's snowing across the Washington state and snowing in Blaine and headed our way. It's supposed to be here about 2 o'clock.
That's what they're saying. So yeah, we should expect some more snow on these hillsides around here and a little bit of slippery road conditions. Well, like do you guys have some specific topics you want to talk about on Friday Roundtable?
Yeah.
I have some things that I want to put on there.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the media love affair with Kim Yo Jong. And the reason why this is interesting to me is when we talk about politics in this country and the fact that whenever you're dealing with a political situation that there's so much lack of truth and so much lack of transparency that happens on both sides of the aisle. But I want to share what's happening in the media right now, and this just really demonstrates just how out of touch with reality they really are. So I want to start with sharing a clip that actually talks about some of this is actually the picture that North Korea would like people to believe is true about their country. And this is actually a short video clip which demonstrates who the Donju are. They're referred to as the masters of money. And this is the top 1% that's in the country of North Korea. Meanwhile, so when you see this video clip, we're going to show this here in just a second. When you see this media clip, keep in mind that 24 million people in North Korea live in extreme poverty. $10 a month. Extreme poverty. And many of them are eating grass and other things like that just to sustain themselves. The person that President Trump had in the White House recently was the guy that walked 6,000 miles or whatever it was several thousand miles. He walked on a pair of crutches to escape North Korea. And he talked about his siblings and what they ate so that he could get some of their limited food supply and actually heal from his injuries. That is 100% true. There's 24 million people living in similar circumstances to him. So show this picture that North Korea would like us to believe is what actually happens in their society.
Don't think of teenagers and 20-something millennials as the dominant age group among the wealthy. We usually think of older men and women who've been doing business for decades and managed to accumulate tons of wealth. And yet, there are a select group of kids who make up the 1% who you can find in the Democratic People's Republic, also known as North Korea. They inhabit an exclusive part of Pyongyang that is known as Pyonghattan, a play on word from Manhattan. North Korea's backward economy has most people earning around $10 per month. But these rich kids have managed to either become self-made millionaires or they made wise decisions with their parents' money and created their own fortune. These kids are known as the Donju, which means masters of money. The crazy thing is that the Donju usually hold government positions as well. Like other places around the world, if you have money, it talks rather loudly. In terms of North Korea, it means living a completely different lifestyle from the general population and maybe even earning an extra privilege or two. Living in North Korea means that you're usually cut off from the outside world, but for the Donju and their families, they have opportunities to enjoy things from the Western world, such as music. While they may be a bit behind on current trends of music, they can get access to pop music like Britney Spears and maybe a boy band or two. They can also get recordings of Western programming because they can afford to pay for it through the black market. It's also not uncommon for the children of military officials to go to college in China and earn money there. They then send that money back to North Korea to help enhance their family's wealth. The very fact they can enjoy traveling back and forth from Pyongyang to China is significant and not typical for most families. You can
okay, that's good. All right, so the point that I wanted to share with this, and you can find this video, Kyle, if you can put the title for it in the comments somewhere on the show so people can watch the entirety of the video if they wish to. There's 9.5 minutes of video footage there if you want to see it. But the point with this is that listen to what she shared. There's this small 1% of the children and the families in North Korea that are kept in this basically this separate society from what the rest of North Korea is. The balance of North Korea are these people living in extreme poverty. $10 a month is the typical family wages, eating grass and dirt and things like that to sustain themselves. When people talk about the fact that in our country, the style of government that we have here, our political parties that we have here, and people are saying that we should be moving more towards this government provides everything and this more socialist or even communist type rule. People think that that's some kind of nirvana. They're not about equality of opportunity. They're about equality of outcome. So here's 24 million people living in equality of outcome. They have $10 a month. It's equal among all of them, and they're living in extreme poverty. And if you think that it doesn't happen in society, that you have this little crust of people that are taken care of very well, as this video depicts, and then the huge majority of the people. Now, it's funny because we're not talking about, you know, in this country you have X% of people who are living in poverty and X% are, you know, above poverty and X% in middle class and X% in upper class and there is none of this divide in North Korea. There's that top 1% and then there's everybody else who's living in extreme poverty. That's what happens in a totalitarian communist rule in a country. And so that's the real North Korea. Now, let's share a little bit of this near the DMZ and some of the daily life of what's going on the border between North and South Korea. So play a little piece of that.
We're entering Conference Row now, so we're in Panmunjom.
Commander Rob Watt is our guide, a Canadian and Chief of Staff to the UN Military Armistice Commission, set up after the Korean War.
The military demarcation line, or the MDL, is the line that divides the UN side and the North Korean side.
So the military demarcation line is right there with the snow on it in between those buildings.
Yeah, the small concrete barrier you see, but it runs essentially
Yeah.
through the middle of those buildings.
Yeah.
We'll be going into T2 in a few minutes.
Okay.
And this is the only place within the demilitarized zone where the two sides are this close.
South Korean officers face north to protect us from an unseen threat, prying eyes in that building on the other side in North Korea.
This is T2, so one of the meeting buildings. In this
So you
building.
go in this door and they go in a door over there?
Exactly. And
All
same
this
thing
was
occurred,
meant to be
next door.
temporary,
So we went in
but a promised peace treaty never happened. Can I make a wrong step here? No, I'm okay.
As long as you don't interfere with the soldiers. Now you're on the North Korean side.
I'm in North Korea
you're
now.
Technically in North Korean territory now.
And this doesn't make them nervous?
No.
South Korean officers guard the rear door and the side, as North Koreans have been known to sidle up to the windows.
So when we have distinguished visitors that come down or come up to the DMZ, when that happens, they will normally send several North Korean soldiers down to take photos and identify who the visitor is. And they will stand literally outside this window.
Like peeping Toms?
Exactly like peeping Toms. They'll take photos. So you see just outside the window here, this is the MDL marker. They will not cross that barrier.
Now, Rob, you know, it feels like theater, but this is serious stuff.
It's very serious. When we've met here, it's been for subjects such as modifying the armistice or to discuss serious violations or incidents.
The DMZ has seen its fair share of incidents, including one just last November. A North Korean officer made a run for it across the military demarcation line under fire.
He stalled his Jeep right on the MDL between those two buildings, trying to get it across, exited the Jeep with a number of KPA guards in hot pursuit, firing both pistols and rifles. We actually still have a number of bullet holes in our buildings.
So what was happening here when that was going down?
The actual shooting only lasted about 5 seconds. So it was under observation. Several members of the security battalion crawled out and rescued the soldier. They did not respond with gunfire. Absolutely the right decision. We don't want to escalate a situation here.
Ever since, the North Korean sentry, usually posted outside,
Did the guy
has
make
been
it?
absent.
He did.
So we're now at
Okay, you can cut it there,
the high
Kyle.
point.
All right, so here's a couple interesting points that I want to share out of this video clip. And again, Kyle, you can put the entirety of the clip on the comment somewhere for anybody who wants to watch the whole video. A couple of things. Here's a military officer from North Korea who spots an opportunity, basically crashes his vehicle into the curb, runs out of the door, takes off and runs like lightning. And of course, all of his comrades realize what he's doing and they start firing on him, trying to hit him. But here's an officer from the North Korea Army running to South Korea to escape the oppression going on in the military. Now, keep in mind that these people that are in the military are much better taken care of than, of course, people are in typical society. And how much better treatment do you think a North Korean officer gets than the rank and file in the military?
I think much better.
Much better, yeah. You are not going to see a U.S. military officer who's serving overseas or anywhere else look for his opportunity to break ranks and run to the other side. Okay? That is actually a common occurrence that we just saw right there, is people from the military fleeing North Korea. Because here's a thing, is that it's when you think about, you know, this person being taken care of and being treated well, what if you're in the position to where you're never hungry, like the other 24 million people that are starving? Let's say you're never hungry, you're being taken care of. In fact, there's ranking officers in the military are provided with prostitutes and everything else. I mean, there's all kinds of immoral things that happen around that circle. But you're the person who, in many cases, might be in a position to be ordering the arrest of these families who go into these prisons and disappear and whatever else. What do you think about your role and your job?
Probably not very fun.
If you even have an ounce of a conscience, is that a job you want to do?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
No.
And so here's this person who's being cared for. The reality of what the military is expected to do, even though they themselves are being taken care of, is what causes this military officer to flee that country. And having spent time in the military myself and being a military officer, one of the really interesting things we went through in officer school was actually studying these various things around the world and conflicts, that our country has been in, and looking at different governments, their style of military and whatnot. And this is actually a very common type story coming out of North Korea, is that a military officer fleeing the country and fleeing because of what they are being asked to do to their own people. Has nothing to do with his own personal care. He's refusing to, and he's refusing to do what he's being ordered to do. And the minute he sees his light to get out of this hell on earth, he flees and runs. So even in the upper crust. So when people think that maybe the type of atrocities against the people that we hear about aren't happening, there is a piece of evidence
I can guarantee
that it is happening.
I can guarantee you that they're happening. I'm from a very diverse family. We have a lot of family members, and my cousin Chol is from North Korea. And so my uncle was was a veteran of the Korean War, and he brought home a Korean wife and her family, her kid. And they would tell us all kinds of the bad things that would go on over there. And as he got older, he was asked by his church to do a mission and go to North Korea and teach his church to them. And it took a long time for them to make it so that he could go, because the North Korean military told him and told our family that if he steps foot in North Korea, we will take him and we will put him in the military for 2 years. And at the end of that 2 years, he will then go to prison because he left the country as a boy. So, it's not all fun and games over there. And they left for a reason, and that's because there's a better life in America.
And that is not an idle threat at all to imprison him.
No.
Because there's 200,000 people that have completely disappeared. People who have gone to North Korea, either people like him or others that have visited the country. 200,000 people, and the number is increasing.
Oh, yeah.
Who have permanently disappeared in North Korea. No trace of, nobody knows where they're at. If they're alive, dead, sitting in prison, whatever, I have no idea. Okay, so something else I want to capture about what this lady said. So she's visiting with this Captain Rob, who's the one of the commanders there, a Canadian commander, right? So she's visiting with him, and she's sitting there seeing these, hearing them relate about these North Korean soldiers who basically come and press their faces on the windows should anybody show up at the DMZ, taking pictures of them. And she goes, she says, this feels like theater, when in fact, this is very real. Okay, so there's something I want to capture about that. She says, it feels like theater, when in fact, it's very real. On the flip side of this, now this is the only reason why I wanted to, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this media love affair with Kim Yo-jong, does that feel like theater?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
100%, it's all theater, okay?
Not one of those reporters give a damn about North Korea or whatever her name is as soon as those cameras go off.
You guys, that is 100% theater. And Kim Yo-jong showing up at the Olympics and putting that little smile on her face, again, is 100% theater. Now, it ought to feel like theater because it's all fake. The love affair with her is just completely about pushing a political agenda. Has nothing to do with what reality is. And her showing up there with her little smiling face has nothing to do with the fact that this is what living and breathing evil looks like in a pair of 6-inch heels. That's exactly what Kim Yo-jong is. Now, for people who are still a little unconvinced that, hey, maybe it's not as bad as people think. Maybe even this 1% of people who are well-fed, they're provided everything they want or need or whatever else. They're sitting in this upper crust. Do those people, I showed you earlier, one of my arguments being that this member who's an officer in the Korean army, he has nothing to fear for his own personal safety, or so you'd think, right? What about somebody who's in that 1%, the Donju, the masters of money? What about these people? Are they leading this glorious life? Because this is the image that North Korea wants the rest of the world to think they have. Are those people have any reason to fear for their safety and whatever else?
Absolutely they do.
Well, they do, and the proof is actually in the pudding at the Olympics when a impersonator of Kim Jong-un walks into the Olympic hockey arena and walks in front of the North Korean cheerleaders. Take a look at what happens.
At this point, the kids are probably terrified. They don't know what they should do because they don't know if this is actually the beloved leader or not. So they just don't know how to respond. It looked like there for a minute. Well, if we cheer for this fake guy, we might get killed.
This is a silent cheerleading squad.
So is there a story
Okay, that's
of
enough
why this
of
guy
that
is
clip.
here and why he's doing that?
Okay, well, he showed up there. Yeah, he's actually interviewed later, and he shows up that he wanted to make a statement. And so that's why he showed up. His name was actually Howard. And I believe he lives in Australia. So anyway, but he comes there because he does, in fact, want to make a statement. And interestingly enough, one of the statements he ends up making is showing the proof that even the Danju, even these people who are being taken care of, the upper crust of society, are so fearful of this guy that they think might be Kim Jong-un. There's two fears that are going through them. Number one is some of them very quickly figure out that this is an imposter, that this is fake. How would he be here, and why would he be, waving this flag around of unity and whatever else? That's not what they're accustomed to. So out of shock, you see them all basically shut up and sit down. And then somebody in there figures out this is just a fake, you guys. So now they start doing this little cheer, and all of a sudden they go quiet again because think about this, you guys. Let's say it's 100% established that he's a fake and whatever else. They're cheering. They're not sure if Kim Jong-un, who may well be watching in North Korea, if they're looking at his reaction to this person who could potentially be him and going, look at what your reaction was to me, or an image of me, the supreme leader over here. Who's to say that these cheerleaders don't return to North Korea, and because of their responses they had to the imposter, pay a heavy penalty for it, including the loss of their life? Or maybe there's actions already being taken against their family members who are back home because of what they either did or failed to do in the face of being presented with an imposter of their own leader. Now, there isn't any political leader in this country who would walk in front of a team of cheerleaders, of members of our own country, that would have this kind of fearful reaction of a leader. This is done because of the situations we've already talked about. That situation on the DMZ, that's not theater, that's real. The situation with the Danju and only being 1% of those people actually being taken care of in the country, that's not theater, that's real. The 24 million people living on $10 a month and eating dirt and grass, that's not theater, that's real. So when I think about, some of the dishonesty that happens in our media, this love affair that the media has had with Kim Yo-jong, and talking about her being the picture of diplomacy, and showing this picture of our vice president with her and saying how she upstages him, or having some complaint about him not standing up when they're playing the Korean anthem. There's a zillion reasons, which we shared some of them in the past days, but there are a ton of reasons why nobody ought to pay any respect whatsoever to what's going on in North Korea. I'm curious to know what would happen
if any of the Olympic people that are here, if they failed to stand up or if they kneeled, like what we saw here in the United States. I'm kind of curious what would happen to them if they kneeled for their national anthem.
I don't think there's any doubt of what would happen to them if they kneeled for their anthem.
Really?
We don't have, and I doubt there's anybody who wants to risk their life to prove that either right or wrong.
I think we should try to get both these people on the show, Kim Yo-jong and Kim Jong. Make that happen, Kyle. Let's get them on here. Let's see what. Come on, Kyle.
You're the man. You got your contacts.
I mean, if Dennis Rodman can do it, then come on, man. Or let's get Dennis Rodman on here. He could tell us about
Let's
this
get
guy.
Howard.
Speaking of the comment this lady makes of it feels like theater, I want to talk about a little bit of the shooting situation that took place in Florida and the subsequent media coverage of it. Now, I don't want there to be any doubt. This is a huge atrocity. It was a terrible situation that happened down there. Never should have happened. There's all kinds of things that could have been done to make sure that it didn't happen as well. Now, one of the arguments that people make on the side of the aisle saying that 100%, being 100% proponent of the Second Amendment would say we should have a armed guard and or more armed guards on site. Well, in the school of Florida, they did have a armed security guard on site in that school. He is right now on paid administrative leave and likely will be fired or ought to be fired for his lack of a role down there, because one of the comments that this Sheriff Israel is making is that he said my heart broke or something to that effect when he watched the video and saw what the armed guard had actually done. The guy hears the shooting going on, stays outside of the building and waits for this thing to be done, and I'll explain why. There's all kinds of history that he had in terms of his law enforcement background, but I've had conversation even with local law enforcement and asked them about what types of facilities do you have and what type of training does the police actually have with regard to responding to stuff like this. And I'm sitting there watching the video footage of how the police are responding to this shooting that took place down in Florida, and I'm wondering who is training these people. Here's a guy who is a former sheriff deputy who is now the school's assigned security guard, who's too afraid to enter that building and confront the attacker.
Is that what happened?
That's exactly what happened. Yes, that's exactly what happened.
Okay.
Guy's too scared to go in the building.
I'd like to back up for a second and say that the one thing that is annoying me probably the most about this whole shooting thing, and yes, it's annoying me, is that everybody's trying to blame somebody. Mm-hmm. Okay? There is only one person to blame in this situation, and that is the shooter.
Absolutely,
you know
absolutely.
There are some things that could have been done that may have prevented this. Like the police showed up to this kid's house like 40 times, or around
the
40
FBI,
times. This guy was on the FBI. I mean, so if we want to blame people, we could blame some of these people. But that's not what we should be doing here. We shouldn't blame anybody for what has happened. I mean, it happened. We had an unstable individual who used a weapon. Doesn't matter what kind of weapon he used. I know that some people out there like to try to make this political, but he could have used a rock or a knife and killed people that way as well. So it doesn't matter whether it was done with a gun.
A truck.
But quit blaming people. Quit. Blame the person that's responsible for it, and that is the shooter. That is the person we have to blame.
Okay, so I want to go back to this point of this lady on the DMZ in North Korea, between North and South Korea, saying when she's hearing this Canadian commander relate to what actually happens in that area, and she says, it feels like theater, but this is actually real. I want to share with you a few things that actually are theater, and it's unfortunate, happening in the wake of the shooting in Florida. There's been a number of students who were put on the air, and I'm going to pick here in this particular situation, I'm going to pick on CNN and point out what CNN is doing in their broadcast, because CNN is handing these school kids who are willing to come on camera and talk, they are handing them talking pieces. Now, people would go, is that real, Kevin? Is it made up? Is it whatever? Well, there's a Jay Rotzi student. If we can find him, I'll actually go in and find this clip, and I'll tag it on the broadcast later so people can see this for themselves. There's a 17-year-old kid who's a member of the JROTC. It's basically a officer training school for young kids who have interest in the military. He's 17 years old. He's in the JROTC program. He mentions to the news network that he would like to make a statement as well. And when he shows up, they give him the appointed time, cameraman, shows up. He shows up there, and they hand him a question that he is supposed to ask. And he said, that's not my question. I have a different comment to make, And so then he is then canceled. He's removed from the broadcast. They don't want to hear what he has to say. They want him to ask a question that they want said on the news. He comes on his own media or on his social media page later and shares that not only was he handed a question that they wanted him to ask, but several of the other kids were given talking points as well. And so the media is setting these kids up, and those that go, yeah, that's a question I would ask, or this is a whatever. This is the kind of hogwash. When we talk about fake news that's out there, if I was going to go out on the street and visit with homeless people about what their situation would be, I would go up and put these people on camera and on mic and actually ask them honest questions and give them an opportunity to say whatever they wanted to say. What CNN was doing was going down there, having a off-camera conversation with the homeless person, handing them a piece of paper and saying, this is what you're going to ask and this is what you're going to say, and then turning the cameras on and having this compliant actor share their piece of information. It's hogwash.
You know, they had this dad that all the media is using the video clip of now, this dad that got really upset yesterday. He's an attorney and stuff like that. And they're giving all this airtime to the dad. But I want you guys to go back and I want you to listen to what the son has to say when the dad turns to his son and says, hey, do you have something you want to say? His son got up there and, in my opinion, almost took the hard opposite opinion of what his dad said and said, listen, we have rights, you know, and you know, just went right on down the list. So go back and listen to what the sibling of one of the people who were shot and killed said. It didn't sound like he was ready to go out and grab a bunch of guns, you know. And so, you know, you have this dad. I think that this is a really bad idea what they did by loading up these kids and these family members and then taking them to their legislature 4 days after a shooting. Number one, it didn't accomplish anything. It really didn't. I mean,
and what the country needs is logical solutions, not emotional solutions.
You know, nobody can talk about the weapons that were used right. I mean, it's just, I mean.
Okay, you know. Kyle, you found the video clip that has the kid in here. Let's play this. Bring this on screen and let's play this. Yeah, that's actually a different one. It was
stood on the steps of MLK Magnet School
right there,
protesting that same issue. It hits close to
Let's
home
bring him on screen.
Yeah. Just 1 second. There's a video on this website as well.
And by the way, this story that you're talking about now, this kid that is speaking up, the other side is calling this fake news already. And saying that this just isn't real.
Yeah, and CNN has tweeted. They said this is absolutely not true.
Again, folks, it's right here. We have video cameras. We have our own phones. We have our own access.
Stop. We got to hear the kid comment. Okay, go back.
Experience it firsthand.
I expected to be able to ask my questions and give my opinion on my questions.
But Colton Hobb, a member of the junior ROTC who shielded classmates in the midst of terror, says he did not get to share his experience.
CNN had originally asked me to write a speech and questions, and it ended up being all scripted.
Colton wrote questions about school safety, suggested using veterans as armed school security guards, but claimed CNN wanted him to ask a scripted question instead, so he decided not to go.
I don't think that it's going to get anything accomplished. It's not going to ask the true questions that all the parents and teachers and students have.
There you go. You can cut that, Kyle. Okay, so we'll take that link and put it up on in the feed in the show as well. But there you have it. And of course, CNN is already doing their best to discredit this kid and say, no, that's not what we were doing.
Well, how
much do you want to bet?
Oh no, that's not what.
How much do you want to bet? If you can, take a little screenshot of what CNN wrote in response to this. And go ahead and put that on screen. They say there's absolutely no truth to this. CNN did not provide or script questions for anyone in last night's town hall, nor have we ever. That is a complete bullshit statement right there. After seeing an interview with Colton Hobb, we invited him to participate in our town hall along with other students and administrators from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. Colton's father withdrew his name from participation before the forum began, which we regretted but respected. We welcome Colton to join us on CNN today to discuss his views on school safety. CNN, you've just been caught and busted, and now you're trying to pretend as if you're the authority on truth.
And you just got Kevin Hunter to say, bullshit on the air. That's twice this show. Oh, we're going uncensored. No, of course it's true. This isn't the only kid. This isn't the only source for this story. There's other kids out there that are saying the same thing. So now CNN is calling kids liars.
CNN saying that we did not say this is like OJ saying the glove doesn't fit his hand. It's exactly the same thing.
If you can get the glove on your hand, it fits.
It's the exact same thing. Them saying this does absolutely nothing. All this does is that further proof that CNN, instead of owning up, taking responsibility when they're caught and they're busted, instead of owning up, they'll just continue to deny the truth.
Look at what a mess over all of this. I mean, they're tripping over themselves and lying about kids now just to push what their personal belief is. And they're sitting here saying that didn't happen. Well, guess what? There's too many people out there saying it did happen. And, you know, you're watching, I give credit to whoever the reporter was that ran this story and got this kid on the air to tell the story, because you don't see the media challenge other media very often. And so it's nice to see that they put this on there and they got this story out. Now, I saw this story yesterday. It broke on the internet and went viral. Of course, Facebook is trying to nerf everything and stop people from seeing things, but don't worry, kids. We still have a really good network set up, and we're getting the information out still. So, I mean...
So, by the way, I want to touch on something, though, that Colton did say, and what he did want to share in his comments is he was advocating for having veterans come in and supply security for the school.
Trump...
Fantastic idea.
Great. Yeah, Trump...
fantastic idea.
The idea yesterday of actually giving federal funding to teachers who want to carry and pay for their training, and I absolutely think that they should. Here's
another really cool thing I can tell you about Colton. Kids can be persuaded to say and do whatever they want to, but I'm going to tell you something that I do know about Colton is, as a result of going through officer school myself, I'm very familiar with not only ROTC but JROTC, and something I can tell you that Colton hears regularly is a word: integrity. All right. And he would not allow his integrity to be compromised by CNN News Network. They wanted him to say something else other than what he had to offer. He would not make a false statement. And Colton Hobb, I salute your integrity for refusing to go be a part of a scripted show that was nothing other than pushing a agenda and propaganda than it was about actually dealing with news and the truth.
So, Kevin, would you say that is fake news?
Yes, fake news. There you go. Fake news. Yes. Colton Hobb, you helped bust CNN on their fake news, and of course they wanted to say that it wasn't.
So I just felt that was the perfect time to use it. I love the fake news button.
Yeah, so anything else you guys want to cover today?
It's going to start snowing here in a little bit.
It is going to start snowing for people who reside in Cowlitz County, Longview, Washington, Kelso, any of these hilly areas.
Now, the forecast, you know, because DEM, our local guys, have been really, really, really good about getting the information out on the snow. Same thing with the police departments. You guys have been doing an awesome job. But I have noticed that the forecast has changed a little bit from there was a 500 to 1,000 foot level. That has now disappeared and looks like it's going to actually hit the valley floor as well. So it could get fun here in a couple hours. I have a lot of shopping and errands I have to go run around and do. So, but I love the snow, so it'll be fun for me.
All right, everybody, thanks for joining us here on this Friday's broadcast on Northwest Digital News. We're going to let you go for now. I'm Kevin Hunter, Chris Bornstead, Kyle Torgerson. Till next time. Take care.